I think I've always loved you.
Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and mind-controlling severed heads. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at 1985's Re-Animator. This horror comedy follows a brilliant but completely amoral scientist named Herbert West who has developed a chemical capable of bringing the dead back to life. Unfortunately, the reanimation also causes the corpses to be violent, uncontrollable monsters. In his quest to perfect his science, West wrangles a medical student into assisting him, and together they cause bloody, naked mayhem. Re-Animator is based on a short story by H.P. Lovecraft, who I've covered in a few videos now. This was the directorial debut of Stuart Gordon, who has brought us films like From Beyond, Dolls, and Space Truckers. Gordon got his start directing in theater, and he was actually adapting Re-Animator for the stage. He co-wrote the story with From Beyond's Dennis Paoli and The Pit and the Pendulum's William Norris, who were considering it for a TV series. But then Gordon was introduced to a young Brian Yuzna, who has gone on to produce, write, and direct a ton of movies like Society, The Dentist, The Guyver, and Dagon. Yuzna talked him into making it a film, and this was the first of their many projects together, and Yuzna would go on to work on the 2 sequels to Re-Animator. The movie stars Jeffrey Combs from The Frighteners and From Beyond as Herbert West, Bruce Abbott from Bad Dreams and The Prophecy 2 as Dan Kane, Barbara Crampton from Chopping Mall and Puppet Master, and David Gale from The Brain and The Guyver as Dr. Carl Hill. All of them really enjoyed their time on set and would either return for sequels or for other movies with Gordon in the future. Re-Animator is obviously a bloody and corpse-filled adventure that needed a lot of makeup and special effects, and the team was led by the legendary John Carl Buechler. He's worked on hundreds of horror films including Ghoulies, Friday Part 7, Halloween 4, Nightmare 4, and Hatchet to name just a few. Other awesome effects artists on the team include John Nollan from Critters, Everett Burrell from Pan's Labyrinth, and Anthony Dublin from The Blob. So as you can see, it's a stacked crew. Cinematography was handled by Hell Knight's Mac Ahlberg, and the score was composed by Richard Band, who based the opening theme off of Bernard Herrmann's score for Psycho. The film was distributed by Richard's brother Charles Band under his company Empire Pictures, which worked with Yuzna and Gordon on many projects. Re-Animator grossed $2 million at the box office, doubling its budget and even managing to get positive reviews from critics. They enjoyed the offbeat humor, the ridiculous practical effects, and the really committed performances by everyone involved. It's gone on to have a huge cult following, and with a 94% and 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, it is still loved today. I didn't see Re-Animator until college, but I absolutely loved it, and I've loved it with every rewatch. Better get your circular bone saws ready, because we're watching Re-Animator. The movie opens at the Universität Zurich, where a Swiss professor and nurse lead some officers to the office of Dean Dr. Gruber. The non-stop screaming inside leads to a break-in, where the group finds sweaty Herbert West crouched over the dean with a syringe in hand. The officers snatch West and Gruber jolts up, and despite West's encouragement, his eyes start pulsating and prolapsing until he collapses.
You killed him!
No, I did not. I gave him life.
Cue the baller opening credits. Hell yeah. Now we jump to Miskatonic Medical School in Massachusetts, where Dr. Harrod and student Dan Kane are trying to resuscitate a flatlined patient. Dan refuses to give up despite her lack of response, and the doctor admonishes his optimism before sending him and the corpse to the morgue. We say hi to security guard Mace on the way in, and Dan squeezes the woman in with other bodies in the fridge. He runs into Dean Halsey, who introduces him to the new student Herbert, who is somehow not a wanted man. Dr. Carl Hill takes a break from brain research to say hello, but Herbert is no fan of him.
Your theory on the location of the will in the brain is interesting. So derivative, in fact, that in Europe it's considered plagiarized.
Danny Boy is looking for a roommate, as well as kissing and canoodling with his girlfriend Megan, who is the daughter of Dean Halsey. They have to be sneaky with their sex, as they don't want to risk Dan getting on the Dean's bad side. Dan chases Megan around as a bedsheet ghost all the way to the front door, where West is waiting to inquire about the open room. Megan's creep radar is sky high, especially when West gets super excited about the basement, and she questions why he left Switzerland. He simply says he learned all he could there, and his alluring wad of cash is enough for Dan to let him move in that night. Dr. Hill is demonstrating how to excavate a human brain in class, and he reiterates that the brain only has 6 to 12 minutes where it can be resuscitated. Rude little West snaps his pencil at this statement and whips out another just to snap it again. This angers Hill enough to end class early, but West continues, calling Hill's education thoughtless dribble. Hill joins the Halseys for dinner that night to celebrate some grants he was awarded, and he isn't pleased to learn that West has moved in with Dan. He's also fiending after Megan and makes a creepy toast to her right in front of her father and boyfriend. She tells Dan how uncomfortable she is with West in the apartment, adding that their cat Rufus is terrified of him. They realize they haven't seen the cat since they got here and start searching, with Megan deciding to check out West's room. And yeah, poor dead Rufus is in the fridge, and West arrives very unhappy that his privacy has been violated. Dan asks what happened, and West says Rufus got his head stuck in a jar and suffocated to death.
You couldn't call or write a note.
I was busy pushing bodies around, as you well know, and what would a note say, Dan? Cat dead, details later?
Megan is certain West killed him, and he tells them to get out. Dan asks about this glowy stuff, but West says it's none of their business, just as Dan sleeping with the dean's daughter is none of his. That threat of blackmail convinces them to leave, but that night Dan wakes to some awful howling. Of course it's coming from the basement Herbert was so excited about, and after Dan falls down the steps, he finds a zombified Rufus attacking West. The two team up to fight the ferocious beast, with Dan finally killing it with a hell of a toss. It's only now he realizes this was Rufus, and crazy-ass West thinks this is all hilarious. Now he's pretty much gotta tell Dan what's up, and he explains that he was honing a chemical process to reanimate dead organic matter. He has used this chemical, called Re-Agent, to resurrect various animals, including ones dead longer than 12 minutes. But the more intelligent the animal, the more violent it becomes when reanimated, and West asks Dan if he will assist him in his research. He tells Dan that together they can defeat death, but Dan doesn't believe that Rufus was really dead and this is all some sort of trick. So West whips out some reagent when Dan agrees Rufus is definitely dead now and injects the poor broken kitty to bring it back to life. It's an unpleasant experience, and to make things worse, Megan suddenly returns to see the howling zombie cat. Dan tries to report this reanimation abomination to Dean Halsey, who is pissed about this unauthorized experiment, pissed because it sounds absurd, and pissed because Megan was involved in it. He demands a written apology and decides that Dan's student loans will be rescinded. This eventually forces Dan to drop out, and Halsey expels West on the spot as well. With nothing left to lose, Dan sneaks West into the morgue so they can inspect some bodies. Most of them are really fucked up, but they eventually find a corpse with minimal damage that West plans to reanimate. Dan nervously records the details as West injects the dead guy with the reagent, and the Halseys arrive to find Dan. A phone call spooks Dan into wanting to skedaddle, but West decides the dosage must be too low and doubles it. Halsey goes searching as the boys deem this experiment a failure, but the veiny corpse suddenly springs to life. Halsey arrives at the morgue as they wrestle with the behemoth, and his yelling gets the zombie's attention. It knocks the door off its hinges and proceeds to stomp all over Halsey, as well as biting off his fingers, yeeting him across the room, and finally killing him with some wall slams. West finally puts a stop to the slaughter with a circular bone saw, which he forces through the corpse's torso. Instead of getting the fuck out of there, West sees this as a perfect opportunity to work on Halsey's fresh corpse. He of course talks Dan into thinking it's a good idea, and as they strap Halsey down, Megan slips away to search for them. West sticks his glowy goo into Halsey's brainstem, and he awakens to life after 17 seconds. Meg calls out for Dan, prompting Halsey to grab him and West by the neck. He drops the morons when Megan rushes in though, and Mace returns looking for an explanation. West says Halsey burst in ranting irrationally and that he was the one that went apeshit on that corpse. Megan is obviously confused and devastated, and so is sweet stupid Dan. Nobody is as confused as zombie Halsey though, who is now under the care of Dr. Hill. He asks Megan for permission to perform neurological surgery on her father, and she eventually agrees. Then the creep starts making a pass at her, but Zombie Dad is there to break that shit up. Hill pounds his fist in anger and immediately begins his unspecified treatment. Megan finds Dan waiting at her home and she asks what he and Wes did to her father. It takes a couple of smacks, but Dan eventually reveals that her father isn't insane, he's dead. She is obviously not pleased with that information, but Dan promises to explain everything. Meanwhile, West has received a surprise visit from Hill, who wants West to hand over his discovery to him. Dr. Hill low-key has some mind control powers that we'll get into a little bit later, but West reluctantly hands over his notebook to the doctor, who is truly impressed with his ingenious discoveries. But while he is busy watching cat tissue reanimate, West snags the shovel and whacks the shit out of him with it. He finishes off the creepy doctor by decapitating him as well, and of course, he sees this as an opportunity to experiment.
I've never done whole parts.
He reanimates both the body and the severed head, and Hill's head is the first to wake up. West gets too distracted by the head's insults to notice the body sneaking up on him, and he gets knocked out. Meanwhile, Dan and Megan have snuck into Hill's office to check on Dean Halsey, where they not only find a creepy stash of things related to Megan, but that he also lobotomized Halsey. West, who is somehow still alive, finds his lab has been ransacked and Hill is long gone. Dan arrives to hear his panicked screams, and while he is mad Herbert has killed and reanimated yet another human, he also realizes that Hill plans to silence both of them the way he did Halsey. Dr. Hill and his body have returned to his office, and the two of them re-up on that sweet, sweet nectar. He also soaks up some tasty blood to keep things flowing and uses those psychic powers I was talking about to send Dean Halsey after Dan and West. Dressed in a fantastic disguise, Hill sneaks into the morgue and starts tinkering with the corpses. Dan returns to Megan's house to make sure she's okay, and while the two try to rekindle their previous love, Halsey bursts in and attacks Dan. He smashes his head against the wall real good and snatches Megan to take her away. They soon return back to nasty-ass Hill, who has the father strip down his unconscious daughter and strap her to the table. West wakes up Dan and they head to the hospital, and Megan wakes up to a horrifying groping. She gets an arm free and knocks the head off Hill's body, but he just finds it funny. Hill picks himself up and confesses his love to Megan and slowly makes his way down to orally rape her. Luckily, West bursts in and insults the sleazy doctor, adding that he will never get away with this.
Who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow.
Hill tells West he made a mistake coming here, and his army of reanimations burst to life. The burned, broken, and bloody corpses attack Dan and Megan, and Hill stops West from overdosing his body with reagent. Hill sicks his puppets on West and pins him down, and he reveals that lobotomizing the reanimations gives him total control of their will. He plans to add West to his army, but as Megan screams to her father, a bit of his memory returns. He saves West and throws Hill's body into the hall, prompting Mace to go the hell home. Then he grabs Hill's head and starts squeezing, which hurts all of the reanimations as well. Dan wants to take this chance to escape, but Megan doesn't want to leave her dad, and West wants to overdose all of the corpses. He starts with Hill's body as Halsey finishes his head, and the reanimations break into mindless rage. Hill's body goes crazy and launches an intestinal attack on West, and a bunch of chemicals spill to create a hazardous gas. Dan fails to pry West away, and the reanimations team up to completely dismember Dean Halsey as Dan and Meg run. West does manage to toss Dan his notes on their way out, and they manage to fight off a reanimation as they wait for the elevator. Unfortunately, another one snatches Megan by the throat, and apparently its grip is so strong Dan has to go for the fire axe. He hacks the arm off and pushes it outside, but the damage has been done. Dan rushes her upstairs and the doctors try to resuscitate her, but Dan once again has to cope with the fact he can't save someone. He sadly kisses Megan goodbye until he realizes he has just the fix for death right in his duffel bag. The movie ends on a fairly tragic note as Dan tells Megan he loves her and goes to inject the reagent. And that's Re-Animator. It's a bona fide hoot. I'm not big on horror comedies, but it delivers in just the right ways for me. The practical effects are simultaneously fantastic and B-movie quality, making them very memorable. I love the effects for Brutus, the veiny corpse, and of course Dr. Hill's severed head. The music and cinematography are also top-notch, especially considering the low-quality pictures that Empire would sometimes produce. All of the cast give great performances, obviously with Jeffrey Combs as the standout. Herbert West is so hateable, but also so invigorating to watch. Barbara Crampton also gives a fantastic performance as Megan, and I'm glad she was comfortable with that absurd finale. I'm also glad both of them returned to be in Gordon's second film, From Beyond. Sadly, Barbara doesn't return for Bride of Re-Animator, but her role was going to be pretty small, so I can understand why. Gordon's decision to primarily use stage actors was great, as their hyperbolized acting and movements really bring every scene to life. After re-watching Re-Animator, I can see why it's largely considered Gordon's best film of all time. It packs in all of the great components he's known for into one gruesome, hilarious joyride. Soon I'll be talking about the sequel, Bride of Re-Animator, but first I gotta cover a patron request. I hope y'all don't have kids, cause next week we're looking at Sinister. Thank you all for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Re-Animator. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks y'all.